Hello everybody, welcome back to Instant Release. Today we're going to talk about a camera that I didn't really plan on buying, but I've had it in my mind for quite some time, which is the Nikon D100, which is a camera from 2002, which was released originally at a price of $2,000. It was intended to be an enthusiast level camera that would be the cheaper equivalent of the Nikon D1 series. So, why did I get the D100? I got the D100 for a very weird reason, I guess. Not because I wanted to test that camera in particular, but because one of my dream cameras is the Epson RD1. And the Epson RD1, if you already know that camera, you know that this camera is not only rare, but it's also extremely expensive. And on top of that, I mean, it's like what, $1,000 if you want to get one. Generally goes around those prices. And initially I thought, oh yeah, I could, see myself spending that much for a camera this good, but I did not take in account the M-mount glass, which, I mean, you need to have Leica M-mount lenses for the rangefinder mechanism to engage. So, I mean, that's another expense I didn't plan, because I was originally planning on using my F-mount lenses with an adapter, but that doesn't work that way. So, yeah, not only is the camera very, very expensive for what it is, we're talking about the 6 megapixel APS-C sensor from 2002, but also we're talking about very expensive M-mount glass, which might not be super adapted to, APS-C sensors. But the reason why the D100 is because that's the only, to my knowledge at least, that's the only other camera that exists that shares the exact same sensor with the Epson RD1. Sure, you're going to tell me, but Nikon has made other 6 megapixel DSLRs. There is the D50, D70, D70S, and D40, and all of those cameras use, in theory, the same 6 megapixel sensor, but that's not exactly the exact same model as the one that was used in the D100, and that's a thing that Nikon has done with pretty much all of their, enthusiast-grade cameras. They have slightly different sensors. Like, for example, the D200 has, in theory, the same sensor as the D80, D60, D3000 cameras, which is a 10 megapixel CCD, but it's a high consumption, high power version of that same sensor, which has a readout of 5 frames per second instead of 3. There are small differences, not huge ones, of course, but the D100 is the only camera that I know that has the exact same sensor as the Epson RD1, and considering it's very cheap to get, I thought to myself, well, since I really like the images coming out of the RD1, I know there's the image processor thing going on where I'm not going to get the exact same images as you can get as of coming out of an RD1, because, well, first of all, the lenses are not the same, but also the image processor inside the camera is not the same. But I was at least hoping that the black and white files would be kind of similar, because that's really what interested me about the Epson RD1 for sure. I'm going to answer to that question in a bit, but first of all, we need to talk about the D100, what it is, and why it looks like that. The way it looks is very reminiscent of the Nikon F80 or N80 in certain regions, and that's no coincidence, because that's literally a Nikon F80 with digital guts added on the back of it. So, in a way, this is really a transition camera. This is a camera that had its base on, a film camera, and they made a digital camera out of it, and it's not like a Kodak, like Frankenstein camera where they took, Nikon SLRs and Canon SLRs and put like digital backs on them. That's not it. This is a real product that Nikon made and sold as a standalone unit. It looks pretty nice. I mean, if you didn't know that the F80 existed, it would have, some design choices would have been a bit intriguing, as we're going to see in a moment, but overall the camera would be fine. But yeah, that's an old camera. That's a camera from 2002, as I said. And the main thing I want to say about the D100 is that besides, the whole thing that it has the same sensor as the RD1, the D100 is not a camera that is exceptionally well, made for digital photography. And the thing that this camera was sold for $2,000, that's a little bit of a tough pill to swallow, I think, especially considering that the D70 exists. So let's talk about specs for a moment, and this is a camera that has the exact same autofocus and metering system as, not the metering, but like for the exposure, but not the white balance, of course. But it has the same metering and autofocus system as the F80, of course. It has the same shutter. You consider, despite having an APS-C sensor, we have, if the camera can focus on it, we have a full frame mirror inside it with a full frame prism right under the flash, which is right here. Okay, so we have like full frame guts with an APS-C digital body, and it's not that it's not well adapted to that, but at the same time it makes the camera larger than it needs to be, and also heavier because of the digital stuff that had to be like kind of external to the rest of the camera. That's why you have that big chin at the bottom of the camera. The F80 does not have that, so yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag in my opinion. On top of that, there are some things that Nikon did to the D100 which I do not understand on a design perspective. You see, on the F80, which is it's a film camera, so you're not changing your ISO very often. You change your ISO maybe if you change the film stocks. You could even get to the end of a roll and put another one in it. It's the same kind of film type, so you don't even have to change the ISO. So it made sense back then to have the ISO setting on the mode dial, because you wouldn't change that all the time. It's still on the mode dial on the D100, which, in my opinion, for a digital camera is a nonsense, a complete nonsense, because it makes the mode dial, the exposure mode dial, it makes it like completely useless because you're always changing it, because you want to change your ISO. And on top of that, that dial, they also put on their stuff like white balance and quality settings, and they even put autofocus modes on that. Whereas on the F80, the autofocus mode is on the back of the camera, is more accessible. Literally, the F80 is a better handling camera when it comes to controls than the D100, which is a rework of the F80. That does not make any sense, and I think Nikon understood that very quick, because you have all of those buttons in the back, which are basically doing one function only, and I think like very quickly in their APS-C cameras, which don't have the pedal thing on the top, which has been there since, I don't know, like the F5. These buttons in the back would have like a double function. You would have ISO, quality, white balance, stuff like that in the back here, and not on top, where, this is really the worst implementation you can do of something like that. If I haven't really shown it to the camera, but yeah, this is really bad. It's funny when you start using the camera, you feel like, oh yeah, it's a tactile experience, it's great, and then you just hate it for the next hours that you use the camera. It becomes very old very quickly in like 20 minutes. It's really not something that I enjoy about that camera at all. The rest of the camera is pretty straightforward. You have your CF card in the back right here, and it works fine. I have no major problems with the D100, apart from that top mode dial, which has all the other separate controls on it. But yeah, now we're going to talk about why the D100 to me does not make any sense. The reason why spoiler alert, the reason why the D100 does not make any sense is because the D70 exists. And to put things back into perspective, the D100 was released as an enthusiast grade, and it's the end of the day, winter's back, anyway. The the D100 was released as an enthusiast grade camera, costing $2,000 in 2002, which, I mean, to put that into perspective with the inflation and everything, that's like $3,400 nowadays. That's a lot of money, okay? 2 years after the D100 was released, so in 2004, Nikon released the D70, which has the same 6 megapixel APS-C CCD sensor, just slightly modified, but the burst rate is the same, the dynamic range is the same, the noise levels are the same as well. It has the same burst rate. I don't know if the buffer is the same, but the buffer is so atrociously small on the D100 already that I think it would not change much, even if it was really bad on the D70. It also has a CF card port. It also has twin dials. It has better controls. It has the same autofocus system. I don't know if I already mentioned that. It has the upgraded, better metering system, and has all the functions of the camera are the same. It's also, just like the D100, it's a plastic body. It's not weather sealed. It does not have features that you would expect to have on enthusiast-grade Nikon cameras, like the AI indexing ring around the lens mount for AI and AIS lenses. You know, you don't have all of those things, and that's really the biggest problem of the D100 compared to the D70, because the D70 is cheaper, because when it was released in 2004, it was like $999, which is literally half the price of the D100 for a camera which is basically the same or better, depending on what you look at. And even today, the D100 is considerably rarer than the D70. There are D70s everywhere. So if you want to get a D100, it may cost you around $50, but you can get a D70 for $30. So it was true back then that the D70 was a great deal and the D100 was like a really poor value. That's the same deal here today in 2026. If you want to get either a D70 or D100, the D70 is always going to be cheaper than D100 at the same condition level and everything like that. But yeah, that makes the D100 really hard to recommend to anyone. And yeah, the thing about the sensor, I guess it's it's a matter of personal preference, but I didn't really see the benefits of having the D100 sensor compared to the D70. I downloaded D70 raw files to compare them to the D100, and I was not really able to see any difference in terms of color science or how it handled highlight and everything, and I certainly did not see the tones and whatnot that I saw from Epson RD1 raw files, especially from people shooting black and white. So the D100 might share the sensor with the RD1, but it does not share the same image quality. And on top of that, there are other Nikon cameras which are cheaper and better, and there's not much of a reason for the D100 to exist at all. And that's the saddest thing about the D100. But let's, if you compare the D100 in terms of size, it's not really a particularly small camera. It's basically the same size, not the same weight, but it's basically the same size as my Nikon D700, which is like a full-frame 12 megapixel sensor which really cost like $3,000 to get when it was released. And I mean, it's not the same category of camera at all. This is a magnesium alloy body, etc. Like, this is a professional body. This is like amateur stuff when it comes to Nikon, and it was sold for enthusiast grade money. So that's really the problem with the D100. But let's, do a bit of a what if scenario here. What if Nikon, in their infinite wisdom, did not take the f80 as a base for the D100? What if there was another camera which was enthusiast focused, which had all the features that you would want to have in Nikon enthusiast camera, and was like available? It was released just a couple of years before the D100 even came out, so they definitely had the time to work on that, to adapt it to digital. The camera I'm talking about is the Nikon F100, which released I think in 1999. So we're talking about a camera that has weather sealing, magnesium alloy body, Slightly better autofocus system than the F80, but still a 5-point system, so not really a huge change there. And it had like the AI ring and everything like that, because if you want to put like a legacy lens on the D100, it does not meter at all. So Nikon had that camera available. Why didn't they pick the F100? The reason is actually quite simple. They already picked it for the D1. If you look at the D1, the top plate is basically the same top plate as the F100 because it comes straight from the F100. And why is that? Well, they didn't want to take the top plate of the F5 with the interchangeable viewfinders because I think this has to do with the fact that the D1 series was an APS-C camera and the F5 was, a full frame, so they didn't want people to change the viewfinders to have like a waist level viewfinder that would have the view that would not be representative of what the camera would output. So I guess they took the F100 top plate and then they become stuck, and the only thing that they had on hand for the D100 was the F80, which is why it's the way it is. But let's just say that they took the F5, they figured out a solution for the waist level viewfinder stuff to have the correct APS-C framing, and let's consider that they just put all their eggs in the F5 basket when it comes to the D1. So the F100 was available for the D100. Not only the names would have coincided, which would have been nice, but also the camera would have had all the features that you would want to have on a camera of that price class, but also it would have been the best Nikon 6-megapixel DSLR ever made. That would have been a camera worth getting over a D70. People would not have felt ripped off when the D70 came out, and this would be a camera probably that would still be a fan favorite even today. The D100, on the other hand, the one that we really have, that happened to be made, this camera is completely forgettable, and I'm so sorry to say that to that camera because it still takes nice pictures. But if you want to have an old DSLR experience for literally peanuts, that is going to be way ahead of what the D100 was able to do, just get a D70. That's going to be the word for the end. Just get a goddamn D70. So on that note, thanks so much for watching. If you were planning on getting a D100, you know what to do. And I'll catch you all in the next one. Take care.